clips it through. Oh, and Lombardo gets a touch. And Crystal Palace have opened their account for the season.
Here's Limpar, lines it up, finds the net. Arsenal are in front.
There's a lovely first-time ball for Petrescu. He'll look for the cross, will he? No! He'll go alone down Petrescu.
Taribo West has put it into his own net. Calamity for the Derby defender.
Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Hipster Football Podcast. Coming up on today's show, we create our third Hipster Top Trump card as we Viagare a Genova to look at Sampdoria. We start to build our very own Hipster football team this week, looking at goalkeepers. We have our work cut out for us as we go back in time to try and stop the breakup of Yugoslavia. And we've probably failed miserably again as we play 6 Degrees of Kevin Prince Boateng. So this is a new show that's dedicated to some of the lesser known and maybe even cooler clubs and players from world football. My name is Adam Can and we're joined by our regular panel. So I'm going to say ciao to Ed Hoyland.
Ciao bella e ciao tutti. Buona westente, Chris Waddle. It's good to be here.
Excellent. I'm glad. It's nice to have you here as well. And I'm going to say salve to Neil Middleton.
Hello. How are you?
I'm all right, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. I've got a craft ale on the go, obviously. So my hipster juices are flowing.
I notice you're not wearing a hipster football shirt tonight, though, like the rest of us.
No, sadly not tonight. I have my latest purchase on order, so I'll maybe wearing that next week.
Okay, we'll reveal that next week. And I'm going to say pronto to James Dunkley.
Hi, good evening. It's good to see you all again.
Wearing the England 1996 Euro shirt.
Yes, that's what we're wearing. Shearer on the back. Couldn't be anyone else.
Awesome, mate. Awesome. So before we start, please like, subscribe, give us a 5-star rating so you don't miss any of our shows. You could follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HipsterFootyPod, and you can email us on hipsterfootypod@gmail.com. Let's get on with the show. So, we've now done 2 of our top trump cards. Sparta, Rotterdam and Racing Club Lons are in the bag. It's time to go to Italy for our third card. We're going to have a look at Sampdoria. So I'm going to come to you first, Neil. Why are we looking at Sampdoria? Why are they hipster?
Well, frankly, they are utterly cool. Sampdoria, to give them their full name, is, of course, Unione Calcio Sampdoria.
Amazing.
A fabulous club with the most iconic kit, I think, in world football. They have had a fairly consistent presence in Serie A with very little success. I think we all remember the heights that they reached in the early 90s, clinching their only Scudetto, and 4 Cup successes, late 80s and 90s, really marked their zenith. Aside from that, they've pretty much just been a provincial side and actually dwarfed by their city neighbours in Genoa in terms of honours won over the years.
So you mentioned the kit. I'll come back and talk to you about the kit a little bit later on, Neil, because I think the kit's worth spending a little bit of time on. Ed, any famous players, anyone that the guys listening at home will know and go, oh, he played for Sampdoria, right?
So where do we start? I know we've done 2 clubs so far that maybe many of the listeners are not as familiar with as certainly, English clubs. Sampdoria have been one of the mainstays of our love of football since the early 90s, of course, with Football Italia, etc. But of course, they only were formed in 1946, and for the first probably 40 years of their existence, didn't really achieve much. They, as Neil said, were absolutely in the shadow of the great Genoa team that kind of swept all before them in the olden days of Italian football. But we probably check in with them first in the mid-80s because it was the era when Italian football started to get some money in, and they started pulling in some big names from across the continent. And so Graham Souness, Liam Brady, and Trevor Francis were the first three major imports that came to the Ligurian coast in the mid-80s. And they helped Samp win their first major honour, which was the Coppa d'Italia in 1985. However, that was just a taste of what was to come. Their golden era, and we'll talk about it, I'm sure, in greater detail, between the late 80s through into the kind of early to mid-90s, these names are just a thing of beauty. Gianluca Pagliuca, Moreno Manini, Pietro Vercovod, Giuseppe Da Sena, Attilio Lombardo, Alexei Mikhailichenko, even some real hipster names for English football fans in the form of Ivano Bonetti and Marco Branca, who will be familiar to fans of Grimsby Town and Middlesbrough, respectively. And even a very, very young Enrico Chiesa, who managed to leave Samp just before they got really good and then came back just in time for them to go rubbish again. But from that period, the two above all that epitomised this time in Italian football history and in world football history were, as the Italian called them, I gemelli del gol, so the goal twins. Of course, Roberto Mancini and Gianluca Vialli. One, the stately prince of Italian football, the other, the perennial capocannoniere. They truly were the heart and soul of manager Boscoff's team. We talked about the Scudetto win in 1991. The year after that, they were defeated only by Barcelona in the European Cup final. Boscoff went away and was replaced by Sven-Goran Eriksson, who, of course, we're all familiar with. So that original team was gradually dismantled. But it's actually awe-inspiring, the players that they had for the rest of the 90s. So these are the names that came to call the Marassi home. Des Walker, Vladimir Jugovic, Ruud Gullit, David Platt, Sinisa Mihailovic, Christian Carumbo, Clarence Seedorf, Juan Sebastian Veron, Ariel Ortega. These are big, big names that were part of every major tournament in the 1990s. And then since then, it's almost been a tale of two players and two players only. At the very end of the 90s, before Samp were finally relegated out of Serie A, they had precocious young talent Vincenzo Montella, who stayed with Samp right up until they got relegated, and then for the sake of his career had to move to Roma. He returned to play again as soon as Samp came back into Serie A. And I think Vincenzo Montella is someone that everyone who watched Football Italia back in the late 90s will remember. And of course, in the more recent years, it's been Fabio Quagliarella. So again, another striker. He was capocannoniere, so the leading scorer in Serie A 2018-2019. And other than that, it's really been slim pickings. There's some big names who have passed through, so Antonio Cassano, Maxi Lopez, and Samuel Eto'o. But realistically, we're talking about the Samp that captured the hearts of every football fan in Europe during that crazy period in the late 80s and early 90s.
I'm going to do you a little dainty tune, Ed. And once I've done this tune, you tell me the player that comes to your mind. Go on.
I have zero idea.
It's the Lombardo by Lombardo.
Of course it is. Come on.
Look, I love the Lombardo, and I love Attilio Lombardo. I didn't get that at all from that.
Well, Neil got it. It wasn't that bad.
You obviously missed the crucial Gazzetta Football Italia episode.
Which is well worth a viewing on YouTube, by the way, because it is hilarious. And Fantasy Football used to do it as well in the UK back in the day. Thank you for that rundown of players there. They have had some phenomenal players. I'll also mention a young Englishman who's playing for them at the moment, Ronaldo Vieira, who went from Leeds, the team that I support. He's doing big things in Sampdoria at the moment as well. James, now Italian football is known for its ultras. Where does Sampdoria sit?
So with Sampdoria's ultras, their main ultra group is called the Tito Ciucerioni. And they were formed in 1969, and they might not be the oldest ultra group in Italy, but they are the most respected ultra group because the term ultras is believed to have first been used in Genoa with Sampdoria.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, there's evidence of this claim. You go back into the 60s, and there was a lot of anti-graffiti towards Genoa. You would walk through the streets of Genoa and you would see Uniti battiamo il rosso e il blu, which is Italian for United, we will beat the red and blues. So again, they're not the oldest, but they're probably the most respected because they actually started the ultra movement. But it's worth noting that they're called Ciucerioni in respect to a footballer called Ernesto Tito Ciucerioni. He was a massively important player for Sampdoria in the 60s. Now, he was a little Argentinian fella. He was only 5'6", but the fans absolutely adored him for his tenacity and for his grit. And out of respect for the man, they wanted to be named after him. He also did a lot to endear himself to the supporters because, in his first derby della Lantana, he scored 2 goals. And one little thing, I must say to all the listeners, if you get a chance, and I think we'll share on our Twitter page, he scores a free kick. I can't remember who it's against, but it's very, very Roberto Carlos. We look back in the 60s and those were really heavy leather footballs. But, the little fella, because like I say, he was only 5'6", he smashes this, and the swerve is absolutely unbelievable.
He must have a foot like a traction engine.
I'll throw this out to everyone. Mate. You first of all, James. If you're born in Genoa, what makes you a Samp fan, or what makes you a Genoa fan, or to anyone else who may know it?
I think tell me, I might be wrong here, and I might be right. You never know. I think it has something to do with the Sampdoria fans. Very much, if you're born on the docks and you have sort of you're a dock worker basically, or your family worked at the docks, or merchants. I think it's got something to do with that, or maybe you don't like cricket because Genoa was actually a cricket club before it was a football club.
Italians don't play cricket, James. You're talking out your backside.
Absolutely not, because Genoa was founded by Englishmen.
Which is why they have the flag of St. George as part of their badge.
Exactly.
Incorrect, actually. I'll come to that later, though.
Oh, wow. Bit of controversy.
I'll stick it out there as well and wait for Neil to slap me down as well. They're called Genoa in the same way that Milan are called Milan, as opposed to be calling Milano and Genova. So, yeah, formed by Brits, formed by English people, and kept the name. So I'm going to be interested to hear why James is wrong on this one.
Well, let's come to that now then, Neil. Let's come straight to you as you've butted in there. Talk about the kit and tell me about the badge.
Okay, well, if you are listening to this podcast and are unfamiliar with the Sampdoria kit, then I have no idea why you are listening to this podcast, because you must have been living under a rock.
Maybe they've come to get an educational journey, Neil. Maybe don't slag off the listeners.
Maybe so. If you are, however, unfamiliar with the Sampdoria kit, what we have is a royal blue shirt with a hooped band across the chest of white, red, and black hoops, which is called the Stemma San Giorgio. And this is a nod to their history of starting as a merger in 1946. As Ed said, the club was founded in 1946, but there were actually two prior clubs in existence prior to 1946, which were Sampierre Veronese and Andrea Doria, the two merging to become Sampdoria, of course. And the colours of the shirt now are a nod to the shirts that existed prior to that merger, which is why we have such a unique shirt to this day. And it's a very consistent shirt year on year. There's very little change to it. They are very true to the roots. Little changes here and there around the fringes, but it will always be what it is: a blue shirt with that stemma San Giorgio across the middle. The club badge is actually the Bacaccia, which is a silhouetted head of a traditional Genoese fisherman smoking a pipe with a very traditional Genoese fisherman's hat, which actually in silhouette looks a little bit Scottish, but apparently it isn't. So again, this is a clear nod to the history of Genoa as a major port city, probably the major port city in Italy. Bacaccia actually is a heavily accented form of it comes from the word Baptist, John the Baptist being the patron saint of the city and of sailors in general. The shirt is iconic, it's unmistakable, and just extremely cool for me. You mentioned the Cross of St. George. It is a Cross of St. George that both Sampdoria and Genoa have on their shirts, but this actually stems back to the Middle Ages, when prior to John the Baptist being the patron saint of the city, it was actually St. George, which was the patron saint of the city, which is why why both sides hold St. George in high regard.
Well, this is something we discussed last week. We talked about lawns. And everything that James has said and you've said, Neil, makes me think, is Sampdoria the working class choice for the people of Genoa?
Yes, I think so. Again, as James has said, there is a correlation. As with most cities, there are certain districts, certain streets that are more one side than the other, and there is a correlation between those families that have grown up around the dock area, which is obviously traditionally more of a working class role, whereas the merchants would have been further inland at higher ground, and it's those areas that to this day are more heavily in support of Genoa.
Fantastic. Now, Italy's quite common in Italy anyway, where city rivals will share a stadium, probably Turin being the exception. Genoa's no different. Ed, tell me about the stadium.
Oh, wow. I've been looking forward to this one. So the Stadio Luigi Ferraris, which is named after a famous military World War I hero from Genoa, it dates back to 1911, which makes it one of the oldest stadia in Italy. It hosted a World Cup quarter-final in 1934, the first time that Italy hosted the World Cup. However, the Marassi, as it's known, which is named after the area around the stadium, the Marassi as we know and love it, and we do love it, was completely rebuilt in preparation for the 1990 World Cup. Because Samp and Genoa had no option but to continue playing there, it was actually built over 3 years in 2 halves. So they did the groundworks, played a season, and then in the off season they built half the stadium, played another season with half of a new stadium and half of an old stadium, and then built the second half. So for one season in 1988. The stadium had a side stand and one half of each end, and then was completed the following off season. So it was quite an interesting way of completing a stadium. They didn't have to put up a mural of people who were all white and have to fill in the black faces like they did at Highbury. However, it was worth the weight. The stadium was designed by the architect Vittorio Rigotti, who had also built the Barcelona Olympic Stadium for 1992. Ironically, Rigotti died of coronavirus earlier this year. His designs for stadia are absolutely iconic. And the Marassi has to be one of the most striking stadia in the world. It's surrounded by terracotta bricks. It looks from the outside entirely part of the residential area in which it sits. As long as you don't look up, because if you do look up, then you see the iconic tower roof supports in each corner rising to the sky, and then with the huge girder supports holding the roof up in diagonals. The only place you'll ever see a stadium like this is if you ever go to Preston, because they completely ripped the same design off and made their own version, which isn't a bad thing, because actually Preston's a cracking stadium to go to as an away fan.
Neil?
Yeah, you say Preston's a bit of a rip-off. Have you seen the plans for the proposed Chelsea stadium at Battersea Power Station?
Yeah,
which isn't going ahead, to be fair.
Exactly the same.
Yeah, well, not going ahead, obviously. It was canned ages ago, but yeah, that's there's a striking similarity there.
So anyway, the Marassi has a capacity of 36,600. One of the things that I do like is that because it's a shared stadium, they have obviously two ends, what we'd call traditional cops. The Gradinata Nord, which is obviously the north end, is reserved for Genoa's home fans. So when they're playing at home, the home end is the north stand. The Gradinata Sud is where the Samp fans stand and where their ultras live and do all their things. And so because they have their own designated home ends, when an away team comes to play at the Marassi, the away fans are housed at whichever end of a side stand is the furthest away from the home ultras, which is a beautiful way of doing it. And what it means is that each of those home ends has been taken over and customized and created in the image of the Samp fans and the Genoa fans. So there's no need for them to have to kind of tear down banners and change things and hide all their ultra culture, because it's there all the time and no one ever needs to see it other than the fans that are there for the home games. So in conclusion, possibly the most iconic stadium in Italy, if not in Europe, and a beautiful history realised absolutely perfectly. And anytime you see a game at the Marassi, it is instantly recognisable, and there are very few stadia where that is the case.
Now, Ed, last season, now, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I saw a Sampdoria kit and a Parma kit that had kind of been merged into one, and both of them wore again when they played each other. Why and how?
Yeah, okay, so this may seem really weird to English football fans, but there is a real tradition in Italy of having this kind of like partnership arrangement between ultras fans of different clubs. With Samp and Parma, it goes back to that 1991 season where Samp won their only Scudetto. Now, that was the first year that Parma had been promoted to Serie A. And I'm sure we'll talk about Parma in a later episode, but as much as they were a fixture in the 90s in Serie A with great success, in 1990, 1991, they were very much the new kids on the block. For whatever reason, the Samp and Parma Ultras built up a friendly relationship. And then in Parma's trip to the Marassi, later on in the season, the fans unveiled a message which read, "For you, Europe, for you, glory, for Sampdoria, the Scudetto," which is obviously like the nicest thing you could ever say, basically wishing the team is going to, win the title.
It's so un-Italian.
Massively. I mean, what a gesture. And over the years, so it's 30 years now, and they still keep this hand of friendship going to the point where, the culmination probably, last season, Sampdoria travelled to the Tardini. It was a 3-3 draw, which is a brilliant game in the first place. But both clubs released special one-off editions of their kits where Parma wore the Sampdoria kit with the. Sorry, Neil, what's the name of the band?
Oh, sorry, you were referring to the Stemma San Giorgio.
The Stemma San Giorgio, but changed to Parma's colours of blue and white, whereas Samp wore Parma's classic cross emblem across the shirt, but in the red, black and blue colours of Samp. And it was, I mean, both these kits were absolutely beautiful for a start because they're both iconic kits.
They really were. They really were.
You can't ruin those, can you? But yeah, there's part of me that loves it. And I don't know what you boys think. I can't imagine that, let's say Sheffield Wednesday get back into the Premier League. I can't imagine our fans unveiling a load of banners when we're away at Spurs going, really, really like your new stadium and Harry Kane's a really good player. Can we be friends?
Probably not, no.
So, obviously, they're friends with Parma. They've obviously got an inner city rivalry with Genoa. James, have they got any other rivals in Serie A or even Serie B these days?
Well, when it comes to rivals, I've purely focused on Genoa and pretty much the shithousery that they have with each other.
Oh, I like the sound of this. Go on. Tell me more.
So, as we spoke in episode 1, which is available to download on many platforms, the Derby della Lanterna is the premium number 1 Derby fixture in Serie A. If you think the Derby della Italia or the Derby della Madonna is the best, maybe this podcast isn't for you. But no, like I say, I want to talk about the shithousery between Genoa and Sampdoria. And you guys being big fans of the Sampdoria kit, you might want to cover your ears when I get to that section. So when we talk about the rivalry, we have to talk about Vincenzo Montella. So Vincenzo Montella became famous wearing the Genoa shirt and was remembered fondly for his wonderful bicycle kick against Port Vale in the 1995 Anglo-Italia Cup final.
Is he really remembered for that? Is that...
Around here he is.
Indeed.
Yeah, here he is.
That's some hipster action right there.
However, he betrayed Genoa by moving to Sampdoria. But that's not all. On his debut, he scored 2 goals against, you guessed it, Genoa in the Coppa Italia. And most footballers would show, a little bit of respect, a bit of maybe, calm the crowd down. Look, I'm not going to celebrate too hard. Not Montella. He did his traditional charismatic aeroplane celebration right straight down to the Genoa end. That man gave no fucks. But this is when we get to the Sampdoria kit. So Genoa, as we know, are represented by a griffin, and Sampdoria are represented by the sailor. So the Sampdoria fans will often make fun of the griffin, describing Genoa as turkeys. Now, Genoa, this is going to upset you. Genoa mock their opponents and call them cyclists. Why, you might ask? Because from their point of view, only a cycling shirt should have as many colours that are included of that on Sampdoria shirt.
Oh, he's harsh. It's
rude. Really rude.
But, we have to be fair to Genoa. They're the elder statesmen in the city, and surely that counts for something. But Sampdoria have widely been regarded. They're, in my opinion, they're the best team in the city. No doubt about it. But something very, very exciting and interesting is going to be happening this season. So in the Derby della Lanterna, they've played 99 games against each other. So they're coming up to the centenarian, the 100th game.
Be behind closed doors.
More, I'd imagine it's going to be. And this is probably going to be one of the most important derbies, not because of the number, because if you look at the Serie A table at the minute, Sampdoria are only 1 point above the relegation zone, and Genoa are only above the relegation zone on goal difference. So can you imagine you have the chance to relegate your rivals on your centenary derby? There's a lot riding. And if it's going to be behind closed doors, such a shame. Such a shame.
I imagine the people of Genoa will still be turning out. It may not be in the stadium, but they'll certainly be out and about for that one.
The Marassi is going to be a war zone that night, isn't it?
It's really interesting because at the start of the season, Genoa had a shocking start, and all the way up to Christmas they were rock bottom until they had a change of manager. Sampdoria have also had a change of manager as well. I think it's Ranieri there now, actually. So both teams are on a bit of an upward turn. It'd be interesting to see how it pans out for the end of the season. Are we ready to do our scores then, gents?
Yep.
Fantastic. So this is to build card number 3 of the Hipster Football Podcast Top Trumps. Starting with stadium personality, this is a score out of 40. Let's come to you first, James.
Do you know what? The stadium was beautifully described by Ed, so I'm not going to add anything on that, but I'm going to give it 36 out of 40.
36, and to you, Neil?
Yeah, I'm thinking on the same lines. It's one of the few stadiums that I think, just looking at the interior of it, you would instantly recognise where it is. Quite unique in its style. I've given it 35.
35 there, and for you, Ed?
I think you can tell from my description of it. For me, it is the most iconic and most unmistakable stadium in the world. It immediately transports me back to Italia 90, and I think probably the most iconic game of that tournament in many ways was the Republic of Ireland against Romania when they won in a penalty shootout. And every time I picture that stadium, I picture Paki Bonner and saving the penalty, and David O'Leary slotting the winner in front of the delirious Irish fans. I don't know which Gradinata that was in, whether that was the North or the South, but no, for me, one of the best in the world, and that's why I'm giving it 38.
Wow, 38. So that gives us a score of 36 out of 40. Big score there. We'll move on to mascot coolness, and James touched on the mascot earlier. Let's start with you, Neil.
Well, I'm not sure that Sampdoria have what we would traditionally call a club mascot in England, i.e. a stuffed sort of suit with a man or woman inside it running around on the pitch entertaining people. I can't find any evidence of Sampdoria having such a thing. I think if they have a mascot, it has to be Bacaccia, which is the sailor, as we discussed earlier. But I'm not sure there is a living embodiment of Bacaccia. But is that in itself quite cool? If it kind of exists?
That's the question. That's a killer question. And I think only the scores will tell us that. This is out of 10, by the way, folks.
Yeah, so is it cool because it kind of only exists in my mind and not in reality? But I don't know.
Okay, you're getting deep now.
I went down the middle. I've gone 5.
5, thank you. James?
Right, again, there isn't a physical mascot, which makes it very, very difficult. So there is sort of caricatures of a mascot, which I do like. But to score a caricature more than a physical mascot, I find that very unfair. It might not be popular, but because they don't have a mascot, I'm giving it a 0.
Wow, 0. Not cool for James. Ed?
I've taken the opposite tack to my esteemed colleague. I don't want a mascot to be a bloke in a suit pretending to be an animal. As far as I'm concerned, being hipster is being effortlessly cool. And I look at Bacaccia, and what I see is the Gorillaz album cover from 2001.
Yeah, I know what you mean, yeah.
I see a cool sailor smoking a pipe, wearing what, to all intents and purposes, is like a weird Scottish beret. It's like Popeye with hair. As far as I'm concerned, it's perfection. The only thing that could make it better is if you make that mascot flesh. And actually, Samp had the first ever mascot that they had, and that in the sense of a small child leading the team out in 1960. They tracked him down in 2016 and had him in full kit lead the Samp team back out again. By that point, he was like a 55-year-old man of similar proportions to what you imagine a middle-aged sailor to be. That, to me, is cool. That, to me, is not trying too hard. And so I'm going to offset James's 0 with my first perfect 10.
Wow. Well, you can't ever say, listeners, that we all agree on everything, because we've got James giving a 0, Neil sitting on the fence giving a 5, and Ed giving a 10, gives us an average of 5. Absolutely amazing. But that's the way we're doing it.
Yeah, I could have gone either way. I was torn between...
But you didn't. You went in the middle, mate.
Well, that's because I was torn.
Oh, okay. Right, Natalie Imbruglia. We will move on now to unique kit rating out of 50, and I'm going to come to you first, Ed.
Oh, come on. Who has ever done a kit like Samp? I'll answer my own question. Palmer. Other than Palmer, who has ever done a kit like Samp? And Samp was smart enough to realise that no one else had done it, and then swapped kits with Palmer. They are absolutely up there at the top of the tree. Now, I've got to leave some room for manoeuvre here, because I'm sure there's some cooler kits out there, but I'll be damned if I can think of one off the top of my head.
Forward Madison from America.
Well, yeah, let's save that one for a future episode. But out of 50, it's 45 for me.
Big scores coming in from Ed. Neil?
Yeah, it is, as I've already said, it's unique. And if you know anything about European football and you see that shirt, you instantly know it's Sampdoria. You would never mistake it for another club. Aside from that, it is bloody beautiful as well. It's a lovely combination of colours, and I think for me it's faultless. It's faultless, and it is utterly unique. So I can't give it anything other than full scores 50.
Wow. Full 50. James, you talked about the Genoa fans describing it as a cycling outfit. What do you think?
I would be proud to wear that when I'm out cycling. No questions about that. We're talking here, we're saying how much we love the shirt. One thing Sampdoria does, which I absolutely adore and love, and I don't think you see it very often, is they wear white shorts, white socks, and a coloured shirt, and that in itself is absolutely iconic. I think it's beautiful. It's up there with goalkeepers wearing outfielders' shorts and socks. It's fabulous. It ticks all of the boxes for me, and just visually, I find that stunning. I'm not a big Man United fan. Really don't like them. But when Man United wear red shirts... You support
Sunderland, don't you? Don't you support Sunderland?
Behave yourself. I support Newcastle. But when you... Like Man United, when they used to wear their red shirt, white shorts, white socks, I thought that was beautiful as well. No, it doesn't touch Sampdoria at all. But their trueness to white shorts and white socks, they've never dicked around. They've never thought, let's go blue shorts one season, or, let's have, black socks or red socks or anything like that. What makes it iconic for me, the shirt, but the shorts and the socks, fabulous. And it's 50. It'll always be 50, and I'll be damned if it ever changes from 50.
Wow, another perfect score. This is looking like looking like it could be the top trump card. So it's 45 from Ed, 50 from Neil, 50 from James, which gives us an amazingly high total score of 48, which that will take some beating, that's for sure. We're now going to move on to inverse success rating. Let's start with you first, James, this time. What's your inverse success rating score out of 20, and why?
I've gone down the middle of the road here. I've gone with 10 because I'm just sort of looking in my timeline, and, they've had some massive success. And I look at Sampdoria as being, quite a successful club. They've had, European finals. They've fought up there in the top half of the leagues. So I've gone for a 10. I know it's down the middle, but they've had European Cup finals, so 10.
Nothing wrong with that at all. Neil, to you?
I've also gone 10. I think you need to bear in mind the fact that as a club they've only existed since 1946. So whilst they've not won a huge amount, and certainly not in comparison to the bigger fish in Serie A, they've still won a decent amount of stuff during their lifetime, and they had a sustained period of success in the 90s, which we can't ignore. So 10.
And Ed, to you, please.
Yeah, this for me is one area where I think relative to the other clubs that we've discussed and will be discussing, Samp really fall down. I mean, look, you win a Scudetto, 4 Coppa d'Italia, get to 3 European finals, win a European trophy, all in the span of a decade. And then, we went through the list of players who've played for them. That's not hipster names. They may be very, very cool players that we love, but it's not adequately hipster for me. And so as much as Samp represent everything that it is to be a hipster club in every other respect, I think they're one of Europe's big boys, certainly in our lifetime. And so I can only give them a 5.
And a 5 as well. Like any perfect top trumps card, there is flaws. They need to be beaten somewhere. So this is looking like actually like a really good and fair card. It gives us a rating of 8 out of 20 for that one. And we'll move finally on to the overall hipster rating. Let's start with you, Neil, for this one, please.
Yeah, so I've got 84, which is a bloody strong number overall. But there are a couple of elements that bring it down from what would have otherwise been a near perfect score.
Yeah, and we don't want perfect, do we? Really? Because if you're playing top trumps with perfect, it's if you get that card, you're never going to lose.
Quite.
Yeah, James.
I've gone for 80. I think to score any higher would probably be too. What's the word I'm looking for? It'd be too expected. People think, oh God, it's Sampdoria, of course they're going to score it high. I think we have to be fair. We have to think of our heads and not of our hearts on this occasion.
Nice. Very professional. Ed?
I really had to go to the deep reaches of my heart for this because some are very dear to me. And as I've said, I think that they satisfy the conditions for being a hipster club in the sense that they're a club that anyone who loves football will fall in love with them as soon as you see them play, as soon as you see that kit, as soon as you see the stadium, as soon as you know the history, as soon as you hear the ultras. They're not perfect, but I crunched the numbers, and for me, it splits the difference between these two gentlemen. It's 82.
82. Which gives us a score out of 100 for overall hipster rating of 82. So let's run through these scores for Sampdoria. Stadium personality, 36. Mascot coolness, 5. Unique kit rating, 48. Inverse success rating, 8. And overall hipster rating, 82. That's the card that when you first get the shuffle given to you, that's the card you're looking out for. That's the one that makes you go, yes.
Yeah, you're onto us. You've got a strong hand there, haven't you? As you got something in your deck.
It's definitely going to be a shiny.
Yeah. It's not a sticker book, James. It's top trumps. Come on, don't get shinies.
It could be a sticker book.
Ooh. Series 2. Series 2. Hello.
The one thing I'm wondering is whether our excellent graphic designer Rob can actually fit the nickname of I Bacaccia onto the card. I doubt it very much. Let's go.
Do not underestimate him.
On that note, we have to say Rob has been doing an absolutely fantastic job with his designs. The stuff that we've been putting on our Instagram page and on Twitter have been superb.
Hell yeah.
Absolutely. So check him out at Hipster Footy Pod, Twitter, Instagram. There's all sorts of good stuff happening on there, and we're taking over. We've had a bit of an American theme recently as well. We've gone all American.
It's Alexi Lalas Day, isn't it? I mean,
every day's Alexi Lalas Day.
Oh, but this is the special day because what was it? Today in 1993 was the result in the Transatlantic Cup match.
Yeah,
He believes Cup
93. Yeah, of course, goals from Tom Dooley and Alexi Lalas that somehow managed to beat an England team containing Chris Woods and Carlton Palmer. I don't think Tony Daly played that day, which was probably the reason why we lost. But other than that,
exactly the reason why we lost. Yeah. Right, we shall move on to our next feature. By request, we've had a few people get in contact with us saying, what is the most hipster 11? Now, this is not something we can just throw in there. This is something we needed plenty of debate about, and we've decided we're going to do this position by position. One debate is, what formation do we play? We're going to leave that for another day. I think there's going to be plenty of arguments. But today, we're going to look exclusively at goalkeepers. So I've asked the three panellists to go away and choose their most hipster goalkeeper. Who should we start with today? Let's start with you, Neil Middleton. Who is your goalkeeper for the Hipster 11 and why?
My goalkeeper is a certain Hans-Jörg Butt. German international, began his career in 1994 with his hometown club VB Oldenburg. Developed a knack whilst he was there for scoring penalties, and became the de facto penalty taker for the side. It scored 5 goals in 3 seasons as a youth, which is not a bad return for even some strikers, never mind a goalkeeper. Moved to Hamburg and then to Leverkusen, had a brief spell at Benfica, and then probably more famously went to Bayern towards the end of his career. Actually amassed 29 career goals, which is, again, incredible, really, considering he's a goalkeeper. That's not counting any penalty shootout goals, of course. These are goals during the regulation minutes of any
presumably,
game that he played.
As a German, he always scored in a penalty shootout.
I've not found any footage of him missing a penalty. I will come on to one particular penalty event which didn't exactly go the way he planned. He actually, this is a bit of trivia for you, he's actually scored 3 Champions League goals against Juventus for 3 different sides.
Wow.
Which is really quite incredible. Yeah, he's he managed to come up against Juventus and his side win a penalty and be allowed to take the penalty for all 3 of those sides, and has scored on each occasion, which is really quite amazing. I'll come on to that in a moment. Just to say, just internationally, probably not. Well, certainly nowhere near as famous as a number of other German keepers. I think he although he was a great keeper, played at a time when he was up against the likes of Oliver Kahn, Jens Lehmann, René Adler, Robert Enke, rest in peace, Robert. And although he did get 4 German caps and was in the squad plenty of times, just didn't start many games. Going back to his Champions League exploits then. So the one particular goal which stood out in my mind has been quite incredible. It's the Champions League 2009-2010 group stage. Bayern they're travelling to Turin to play Juventus. They need a win. Nothing else will suffice. It's the final group game. Juve just need a draw, and they're through to the knockouts. Game starts really badly for Bayern. David Trezeguet, or Trezeguet as Gaza famously called him, bagged on 19 minutes. And Bayern are going out. That's it, basically. Good night, Bayern Munich, on your way. They win a penalty on 30 minutes, which is a foul on Ivica Olic. And, of course, who steps up? And think about this. It's not Mario Gomez. It's not Ivica Olic. It's Hans-Jörg Butt. And
that's the point, isn't it? That this isn't a rubbish team he's playing for. This is a team full of superstars. And
absolutely, yeah.
Taking the penalty.
Absolutely, yeah. And if you think about it, I mean, what could there ever be higher stakes? I mean, sure, yeah, a final maybe, but this is a really high stakes game. Bayern are going out as it stands. They need to score this penalty. Bear in mind, it's in open play. Well, it's during regulation minutes. Let's think about it. He scores the penalty, by the way, just spoiler alert. But let's think about it. Had Gigi Buffon saved that penalty, Hans-Jörg Butt is at the completely wrong end of the pitch, and Juve then break away, and they've got an open goal to score in, and then that really is good night. And the trust that Bayern had in him to say, right, yeah, okay, you can take the penalty, and we trust you to actually slot it home. That's amazing, and the brass balls to actually step up there and do it. Incredible. Scores the goal and go on from there. They're energised by Butt's heroics, really, and they go on to thrash Juve 4-1 in Turin and progress through and actually make it all the way through to the Champions League final that year, which is really quite something, given that they could have been out on their arse in the group stage. Another, as I alluded to, another penalty situation which probably didn't quite go his way, slightly less heroic. During his time at Leverkusen, they were playing Schalke, and as was the norm, they won a penalty. Hans-Jörg Butt steps up to take the penalty, and as is customary, slots it home, not a problem. He then basically does an entire bloody victory lap of the pitch. He's celebrating with every teammate. They're all coming up, backslapping, high-fiving. Canters his way back into his own penalty area just to see the ball looping over his head into the back of the net. Schalke, of course, had taken a quick free kick. Mike Hanke sent a thunder bastard from centre circle right into the back of the net, and his left red face. But that didn't deter him, of course, because it was later in his career that he then went on to step up against Juventus and slot that penalty home in the Champions League. So, for me, what I like is, we all like a goalkeeper that's a little bit different. And they always say goalkeepers are all mad. Some are more mad than others. I think to have the balls to have gone through his career, even as a youth, to go, I'm taking the penalties in this team. Good on you, mate.
And is he as mad as a box of frogs, like most goal-scoring keepers are? Or is he German? It seems like a contradiction.
He's obviously German, so he's only a certain amount of humour that a German can possess, I think it's fair to say. But I think as Germans go, I think is well known to be a bit of a character.
Fantastic, Neil. That's a very, very good choice. James, to you. You used to be a goalkeeper in your younger days, I believe, so I'm looking forward to hearing this one. You can't choose yourself.
No, so I've gone for the wall between the sticks, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, but I've gone for Peggy R. Pexhad.
Oh, brilliant name.
So, for those of you who don't know who he is, so he's from Guadeloupe, and for me, I don't know many goalkeepers from Guadeloupe. But just to try and explain what type of goalkeeper I was, you have to imagine if you had Bernard Lama and you had Dimitri Kari, and Peggy is like the byproduct of their soggy biscuit. So Peggy would be, you'd see him in goal for Leicester. You'll see. Wow. So Peggy, pretty much a big black French goalkeeper. Always trousers. Occasionally, now and then, you'll wear a pair of shorts.
Wearing trousers, by the way, is a very hipster thing to do as a goalkeeper. I do approve of that. Yes,
and you know what? For some reason, he was one of these keepers who just had a knack for saving penalties. I think you look at some of the penalties. His very short career, which we'll get to. He saved penalties against the likes of John Barnes, Michael Owen, Paolo Di Canio, Cremondi, and Lee Dixon. But you look at the clubs he's been at, and he's taken a bizarre route in football. So he started his career in France with Brest, great club. And then he moves to Racing Club Lens, who we talk about in episode 2, by the way. But he goes from Racing Club Lens, and he moves to Lille, their local biggest rivals.
That's brave.
And you're thinking, hang on here, what's going on?
We know that kind of thing don't go down well in that part of the country.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It doesn't.
No.
And for more on that, listen to episode 2 of the Hipster Football Podcast.
But then he gets, you could say his big move to the Premier League, but he moves to Leicester, so it's not really a big move. It's a good move, but it's not a big move. He has a couple of games at Leicester, and like I say, we'll get into his appearances later. But out of the blue, he's signed by Liverpool, and at the time, Liverpool, I do believe they had Dudek at the time. They had Westerveld, and I believe they signed a young Chris Kirtland as well. So you're thinking he's got to have gone there as fourth choice keeper. He was second choice keeper for most of his time at Liverpool. So then after Liverpool, he goes off and plays for Coventry in the Championship. Has a loan spell at Notts County, and he also has a loan spell at Stockport County, and then he disappears for a year. And then he ends up at Marseille. I mean, I don't know many players who have gone from Coventry, Stockport, Notts County, and then all of a sudden he's gone to Marseille. But I have a theory on that. So if you look at the games that he's played, he's only ever played 46 first-team games in a 16-year career.
16 years, and how many games?
46.
46 in 16 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
So he played 24 games for Leicester. He played 6 for Liverpool, which this is where it gets interesting. He's played 5 for Coventry, 3 for Stockport County, 3 games for Notts County, 3 games for Racing Club Lens, and then he's played 2 games for Lille. Now, 46 senior games in a 16-year career. But let's see what he's won. So in those 46 games that he's played, he's won 3 Worthington Cups. He's won 1 FA Cup. He's won 1 Charity Shield. He's won 1 UEFA Cup. And he's won 1 UEFA Super Cup. This man averages a trophy every 7 games.
Wow.
And that there is, in my opinion, the reason he signed for Marseille from Notts County, I believe. I think, in Marseille, their head of recruitment has probably thought, right, we need a keeper, what we're going to do. And like us, he's got himself on Wikipedia and he's thought, oh, hello, he's won a fair bit, he's got to be decent. We'll sign him for Notts County, he's just been released.
Brilliant.
How can a goalkeeper who's won all of this silverware, in 46 games. I mean, he's quite efficient. He's more efficient than Mr. Butt, not Nicky Butt. But, how it just blows my mind. I don't know how he's had a career that he's had. But the thing about it, there's never been an exchange of money in any of his transfers. He's been a free transfer everywhere he's gone. The man's clearly not rated, but he seems to be the luckiest footballer of all time. Maybe he's George Weah's, cousin goalkeeper. Who knows? But the nice way as well is he's retired, and there's rumours that he is now a professional porn star. So his career is just on the up.
Wow. I have learned a thing or two there, Jay. That's amazing. Ed, it's going to be tough to beat. Who have you got and why?
Just before I even get into mine, I want to know if Peggy Arfexad has the same strike rate when it comes to his exotic movies.
Way.
Well, an AVN award for every 7 movies he does.
Well, when you've got it, you've got it. No, so what I look for in a hipster goalkeeper, I mean, obviously, is a career as an adult film star later in life, but that ship's already sailed. So what I like are 3 things. I like outlandish flair. I like an exotic appreciation for what it is to be a goalkeeper. And I like a touch of insanity. There is only one part of the world to go to if you want those 3 things, and that's Latin America.
Yes, Ed.
So I obviously considered Mexico's Jorge Campos with his absolutely insane goalkeeper kits and his reckless disregard for the rules of the game. I obviously considered Paraguay's Jose Luis Chilavert for goal scoring ability, leadership, and all round transcending the sport. And of course, I'm a child of the 90s, Colombia's René Higuita, who I think, iconic, if only for the scorpion kick at Wembley in 1996.
The ref had his flag up. The linesman had his flag up, and he knew that, and it's overrated. Anyway.
Would never accounted. There was another player who I don't know whether people are as familiar with, who was known as El Loco, the madman, and that's Argentina's Hugo Gatti. Not only did he start his career as a striker and only converted to being a keeper after 3 years as a professional, but also played for both Boca Juniors and River Plate. And if you want to talk about, okay, Peggy Afexad went from Lens to Lille, and that's one thing. But seriously, I mean, that's like, even Luis Figo is like, sorry, that's a bit too rich for my blood. I'm not doing that. But no, there is... one player who I had to highlight, and that's because all of those guys are household names for a well-travelled football fan like us. A true hipster choice for me from the continent of South America is a man who won a World Cup, 2 Copa Libertadores. He played 1,250 professional matches. That's more than Pele. Even if we accept that Pele lied about pretty much everything, this guy didn't.
Oh, say the name, Ed. Let me come. Say the name.
Scored a truly astonishing 131 goals. As a goalkeeper, in a single season for Sao Paulo in 2005, he scored 21 goals. Okay? That same season, the European Golden Boot winner, Thierry Henry, only scored 25. I'm talking, of course, about Sao Paulo one-club man, legend, Rogério Ceni. The love affair between Ceni and the Sao Paulo fans, it rivals Totti at Roma. There is no greater love than that. He represented Brazil at 3 World Cups. He won a World Cup winners' medal. Despite that, he only played for Brazil 16 times. In 3 World Cup appearances, 3 World Cups that he was in the squad for, he only appeared in 2 games. And I honestly, I couldn't remember either of them. I have no recollection of him at all playing for Brazil. I only have a
massively
recollection
underrated
of every time I used to listen to TalkSport, and they used to go to Gabriele Marcotti as the South American football correspondent, he would always be talking about the latest news from Brazil and how Ceni had scored another free kick or another penalty, or even he scored 1 goal in open play. And this wasn't a 94th minute keeper goes up desperation thing. This was him being part of a move that started from him, and then he carried on going and played 1-2s all the way up the pitch and then slotted. He's, for me, the ultimate hipster keeper simply because of his relationship with, the single club that he always called his home. And for the fact that he scored more goals than strikers that we routinely talk about as some of the greatest of all time. The man who played more games than Pele, scored more goals than David Hirst. I can't imagine a better keeper to go into our Hipster 11 than Rogério Ceni.
Superb.
I've got to add on the end of that. It's, when you have that certain player where you'll go out of your way to watch, like say if it's a Van Basten, you think, I've got to watch that game, I've got to see him play. I remember when Sao Paulo were playing Liverpool in, is it the Club World Cup Championship? And I thought, I'm going to have to watch this game. I've got to see him play. Obviously, me being a goalkeeper, and I'm a massive fan of goalkeeping. Being a member of the Goalkeepers Union since 1989. And I remember he had a free kick against Liverpool, and I was like, God, please score! I've got to see this. This is bucket list stuff for me. And it was such a peach of a free kick. But I don't know who the Liverpool goalkeeper was at the time, but he just got his fingertips on it, and I think it clipped the ball on the way over.
Wasn't it?
I think it was. Dudek. And honestly, I was that heartbroken. It honestly, it was on par with David Batty missing that penalty in '98 for me. I was devastated, absolutely devastated. And for me, he was criminally underrated. He should have got many more caps for Brazil. I would have loved to see. Can you imagine if Brazil had a free kick? You've got Roberto Carlos going, right, I'll have it. Rivaldo, I'll have it. Ronaldinho, I'll have it. And he just kind of strolls up 70 yards and goes, gentlemen, step aside. And was Dida a better goalkeeper? I don't think he was. It's a discussion you could spend a good hour on. I really do think that. But
he wasn't just a novelty keeper either. He wasn't like Chilavert was all right and Campos was all right, but they were showmen. But Cini was a great shot stopper. He was good on crosses. He marshalled his defence. He was a complete keeper. He just happened to have an unerring eye for goal. So yeah, I don't understand why he didn't get more caps than he did. But maybe the best kept secret in Brazil.
Do you think it's because he would have insisted on taking the free kicks? Do you think there's some kind of free kick ego there that he needed to satisfy, and the successive Brazilian managers would have said no?
Well. Interestingly, he actually still is part of the Brazil coaching team. Actually, apparently, he's such a great bloke to have around. So I don't think there's any ego there. I think there's a massive respect. So it's possible, especially when you think about the kind of players that James just mentioned, Rivaldo, Roberto Carlos, people like that. But there does seem to be a massive respect between Ceni and these players. So, it surprised me. Ed?
So maybe the problem was deep down that once you get over 1,000 games, you start having erectile dysfunction. It happened to Pelé. If we're thinking about his career as an adult porn star, then he just couldn't cut it. And, for that reason, I think that, my vote goes to Peggy Arfexad at this point.
Well, on that note, so quick 20 seconds. Why is your keeper better than the other two choices, Neil?
Well, he was more successful in terms of what he achieved at various clubs. But for me, it has to be the trivia of having scored for 3 penalties in the Champions League against Juventus for 3 different clubs. Brilliant trivia. Love it.
Great trivia. James, same question for you.
I think to win so much by doing so little and being able to retire in Marseille, I'd have a piece of that.
As we all would, to be fair. And before I make my final decision, Ed, for you?
Oh, look, I'm going to be honest with you. It's because he played in the Brazilian league his entire time, never came over to England, to Europe rather. That's pretty hipster. And I just like flexing my knowledge over people who haven't followed football as closely as I.
Beautifully put. So I get the final decision on this, which I like. It gives me a lovely power trip, which plays right into my narrative. Now, I'm going to discount Peggy straight away, James. And the reason I'm going to do that is, for me, he's not a hipster, he's just lazy, and he's got a bloody good agent. It's as simple as that.
It's hard to disagree with you. I mean, both arguments that have been put across have been both fantastic arguments. They're both fantastic goalkeepers, and hey, I can't argue. But it's good that we can have these discussions about weird players like Peggy Abrahams. Or Ibrahad, or whatever his name is again.
Does he have the same agent for his porn career as he did his football career, do you think?
That's the killer question.
Ooh, do you know what? Give us a second and I'll dust off some of the old VHSs and I'll have a watch.
I'm wondering if he's had any sort of high-profile transfers from Pornhouse to Pornhouse.
You seem like a bit of an expert on this subject. You know the award ceremony. You're talking about the pornhouses, Neil.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I've ever watched an adult film.
I have heard, I think a couple of years back, he did turn down an approach from ex-hamster.
They weren't going to pay the transfer fee, I heard, in the end.
I don't know what ex-hamster is, sorry.
Of course you don't, Neil. Of course you don't. So that leaves me with a choice between Senny and But. Now, coming into this, I was praying that someone would say Shenny. Really praying. But Neil's put a really good argument forward for But. Really good argument. Champions League, 3 penalties against Juventus, pressure time. Oh, I'll let you know at the end of the show. So now it's time to step into the shoes of Dr. Sam Beckett as we quantum leap. We're striving to put right what once went wrong and hoping that the next leap will be the leap to get our head on the end of a Rory Delap throw-in. So, somehow, this is a really tricky one this week, but somehow we've gone back in time, we've gone back to the late 80s. We've somehow stopped the political and economical issues in Yugoslavia, which in turn has then stopped the breakup of Yugoslavia in the 90s, which has led to an uprising of love for the country through the population, and it's bringing the most prosperous time in the country's history. Everyone wants to be Yugoslavian. What does this mean for the country's football team? Now, first of all, for the layman who may be listening, not Jens or Darren, Neil, can you give us a little bit of political background? And I mean, to keep it brief, because I know you like this stuff.
Yeah, I do like this stuff. I will try and keep it brief. Okay, potted history. So Yugoslavia came into existence after World War I. It was a union of various Slavic nationalities that had previously agitated for independence from the Austro-Hungarian Empire. And it was always an uncomfortable union of principally Catholic Croats, Orthodox Serbs, Muslim Bosniaks, amongst others. And from its formation, it really struggled with that internal conflict. Came under the yoke of communism following World War II. Josip Tito became the dictator and really held the country together through an iron grip as only a communist dictator can. He died in 1980, leaving something of a power vacuum, and what followed was a real tumultuous decade with the backdrop of economic difficulties and the rise of nationalistic and individual ethnic tensions. Really came to a head in the early 90s and led to its breakup.
So Ed, out of the current countries that exist today, which of these countries would remain a part of Yugoslavia if it hadn't broken up?
Okay, so in 2020, there are 7 footballing nations that are relevant to this discussion. So Serbia, Croatia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, the first 3. There is also North Macedonia, Montenegro, Slovenia, and Kosovo.
Wow, so and footballing nations as well, all of them, people listening will be familiar with. James, can you just give us a brief overview of some of the players then that play for those countries that could qualify for a Yugoslavia team if it existed today?
Yeah, well, Ed's been kind enough to mention the countries where people will be eligible from. And I know a lot of people who listen to this podcast will know players from the Croatia team, will know players from Serbia, you know, the Dzekos, the Modric and the Rakitic and whatnot. But there's a lot of players that were lost from that region when the breakup happened. You know, a lot of families had to move pretty much to all 4 corners of the world. So there's a lot of players you wouldn't expect to be eligible to play for Yugoslavia. You know, you've got Zlatan Ibrahimovic, you've got Christian Pulisic, you've got Haris I can't say his name, we'll pass that one. You've got Tom Rodic, you've got Marko Ivalovic, Januzaj, Xhaka, Shaqiri. There's a lot of players, like I say, from all 4 corners of the world who would be eligible to play for Yugoslavia if this breakup didn't happen.
So we've gone back in time and we've done that. And as I mentioned, Yugoslavia is the place to be. these people haven't moved away and they want to play for their country. So if this happened, Neil, let's start with you. Let's do your quantum leap. What would happen and why?
Okay, so Yugoslavia stayed together, right? It stayed united as some kind of power sharing arrangement between the various nations, and it becomes not only a united but a thriving country economically, culturally. It really is the place to be. So Red Star Belgrade had actually won the European Cup in 1991. They are then able to play their home games for the following season in the European Cup at home at their home stadium, and that gives them the home advantage that they'd enjoyed the year previously. They actually get through from the group stage and romp all the way to the final, putting out Sampdoria in the semi-final and coming up against Barcelona in the final. There are goals from Sinis and Mihailovic either side of half-time, which cancel out an early lead from Ronald Koeman, who'd put in a free kick for Barcelona earlier in the first half. Red Star are crowned European champions for a successive year, marking, it really puts the Yugoslav League on the map, the footballing map internationally. People are looking to Yugoslavia as, the league that you want to watch, and it's colloquially known as the Y League. Not only are Red Star able to retain their star players, I've mentioned Mihailovic, they've also got Darko Panchev, Vladimir Jugovic, Dejan Savicevic. They're also able to attract players to the side. Marco van Basten and Ruud Gullit come from AC Milan. Pep Guardiola comes from Barcelona.
Wow.
Georgi Hagi from Real Madrid, to name but a few. This spreads throughout the country. It's not just solely Red Star that benefit from this boom. Partizan Belgrade, Dinamo Zagreb, Hajduk Split, FK Sarajevo, Maribor, they're all attracting the star players from around the world, really, of a really high ilk. And they're coming in to what is a really exciting, competitive league. In contrast, at the same time, the Western European footballing leagues are really beginning to stagnate, largely through the attention that the Y League is getting, and a lot of the star players moving there. As I say, the Y League is really the one to watch. And what then happens is there's a fledgling journalist at Channel 4 called James Richardson who is chosen to host the coverage of live games on what is called Gazeta Football Yugoslavia. And that followed, of course, Channel 4's decision to buy the broadcasting rights from under the noses of Sky B. Italian football, by the way, that the rights to Italian football do get bought by ITV, but unfortunately, that flops, partly due to the poor quality of the football, with a lot of the players having moved on, but also partly due to their decision to choose Richard Keys as the presenter. The strengthening of the league gives fresh impetus to the national side, of course, who they qualify for USA 94 as one of the tournament favourites. They're boasting a squad full of talent. They've got Davor Suker up front, Zvonimir Boban, Slaven Bilic, Alan Boksic, Dejan Savicevic, Predrag Mijatovic, to name but a few. They've got an incredible plethora of attacking talent. And all is going brilliantly, and they managed to get their way through to the semi-final. They're actually playing the hosts, the United States, with obviously Alexi Lalas in the side. The star striker Davor Suker is actually heading towards the Golden Boot, but he's actually outed in the media at the time for having an affair, unfortunately, with EastEnders star Daniela Westbrook, who at the time is actually in a sad. I mean, it's sad. You shouldn't laugh. It's sad because she's actually in a relationship at the time with Brian Harvey. And it becomes a bit of a tug of love thing, and it's played out really. I mean, the worst possible time. It's in the run up to a semi-final of the World Cup, and this isn't the kind of attention that the side needs. Davor is actually flown home to face charges of treason, with it being a really hardline communist nation. They don't take kindly to this public humiliation. Sadly, Brian Harvey sinks into a fit of sort of baked potato fueled despair. he chooses to disband his 17, and which is, to many a young schoolgirl's displeasure, and plans to release his 17 second album Steamer shelved, meaning that their intended Christmas single Stay Another Day is never released. Instead, Oasis's Whatever becomes the Christmas number one, which means that a generation of teenage boys miss out the chance to slow dance with and cop off with the fit girls from the school year.
Wow. I didn't expect this to be history on E17 as well, and what might have happened to them. So as ever, Neil, you have covered all the bases.
It's a butterfly effect.
Yeah, it happens. It does happen. Let's come to you now then. dare I ask, Ed?
Neil has adequately sketched out the early future of continually united Yugoslavia. Like him, I lived through Red Belgrade's European Cup triumph, the upswing of patriotism and unity in a Yugoslavia that transforms peacefully post-communism. The national team builds on that Italia 90 quarter-final with young stars Davor Šuker, Dejan Savicevic, Alan Boksic. They become household names as the Yugoslavia team win Euro 92 in what at the time seemed like a shock, but looking back was anything but. With the American reconstruction money flowing into the country as communism is steadily dismantled, Red Star, Partizan, Dinamo Zagreb become amongst the three richest and most fashionable clubs of the 1990s. And the centre of European football gravity, as Neil pointed out, moves steadily south and east at precisely the time when football's becoming big business. It really feels like Yugoslavia represents the beating heart of a football revolution that is capturing the heart of the world. Not only is the Champions League dominated by the Balkan giants, as Neil pointed out, they're able to attract the greatest players in the world, not only from Serie A, but also from their neighbouring states. So Hristo Stoichkov, Pavel Nedved, they all make their name in the Y League. And powered by this unstoppable momentum, the national side make the last four of each international tournament between 1994 and 2002. In fact, they win the World Cup in 1998 after knocking the hosts France out in the semi-final and go on to crush Brazil 3-0 to lift the trophy. It looks like things cannot go wrong for this once again unified and powerful nation. Fast forward to 2020. The saying absolute power corrupts absolutely could have been written for the now former Yugoslavia. The cracks began to show shortly after Yugoslavia lost the 2002 World Cup final on penalties to a surging England side. The plutocrat owners of the Y League clubs were not accustomed to failure and began pointing fingers at each other and at the players. The fans on the terraces took up the call and violence erupts throughout the 2003 season. By the end of 2004, it's not safe for fans or clubs to travel outside their own strongholds of supporters. A special meeting in the 2005 off-season, the clubs agreed to partition the country between themselves and run their own, more local leagues. By 2007, all 7 of the former Yugoslav republics have applied to FIFA to operate their own international sides, a wish that's granted in time for the 2010 World Cup. Whilst none of those smaller ex-Yugoslav states have since managed to hit the heights of the great united sides of the 1990s, the 2018 World Cup brought fresh hope as unfancied Croatia reached the final, gaining some revenge for their former nation by knocking out England in the semis.
Wow, so it goes full circle, and we're back to where we are. Very poignant, Ed, and a nice message there that football can bring people together, but also tear people apart.
Yeah.
Melting pot.
Everything changes apart from England still losing.
Yeah, but we won the 2002 World Cup, didn't we, Ed, I believe?
Yeah, our surging young England side.
The golden generation.
Darius Vassell, the golden boot, I believe.
Is he your favourite Darius?
Just mainly Darius.
I always prefer Darius Dinesh.
Darius Dinesh, yeah.
James, to you.
So we're going to start at the World Cup 2002, and this is Yugoslavia's golden generation. And like all good golden generations, they win out. So it's 2002, and Davor Suker has fallen out with the manager Iljak Pekovic. So the day he falls out and he returns home, the day after he returns home, he sets out quite a political statement. In the morning, he walks his dog to the shop to pick up a newspaper. His dog's called Charles, and he's a Dalmatian, which is the national dog of Croatia. So it's a huge political statement at the time. Immediately Davor Suker is sent to the Gulag, and we actually don't hear about him again. So we fast forward to the World Cup 2010 in South Africa, and the Yugoslavian fans, they actually ruin the tournament for a lot of people, and it's nothing to do with the vuvuzelas. It's more to do with Yugoslavian synth pop. The fans, as much as they are, into fighting, they manage to come together, and at every game during the World Cup, they're actually bringing loudspeakers into the stadium. So during every game, all you can hear is hits by bands such as Beograd, who are based in Belgrade, and my personal favourite, Video Sex from Ljubljana. If you have a chance on Spotify, have a look for Video Sex. I would recommend their album Video Sex 84 and their self-titled one hit, Video Sex. Fantastic synth pop. They go on and make a respectable quarter-final finish. Now, everything comes together at the World Cup 2018 in Russia. The team's unbeatable en route to the final, but they lose to Russia without registering a single shot on target. Oddly, at full time, Slobodan Milosevic and Vladimir Putin are seen embracing each other in the final whistle. It's far too pally.
No.
Yes, and Russia walk away with the title. Some questionable stuff here. Anyways, we fast forward to the World Cup 2020. At the time, on Netflix, there's a fantastic documentary called Finding Davor Suker. Ultimately, at the end, we still don't know what has happened to him.
Is it hosted by Louis Theroux, perchance?
It is, yes. But at this World Cup, both Yugoslavia and Russia are banned due to evidence of mass doping and corruption at the previous World Cup. So Yugoslavia hold an alternative World Cup where the likes of Turkish Republic of North Cyprus, Palestine, Scotland, and Papua New Guinea all take part.
Like real joke countries.
For the record, Scotland actually got out of the group stages, but unfortunately lost in the quarterfinals 4-1 to South Sudan.
This is not realistic, James. Come on. Scotland would never get out of the group stages.
I've spoiled it, haven't I?
That's fantastic. The Hipster Football Podcast, the only podcast that mentioned Beograd and Video Sex. That's a new tagline. We can start using. That is fantastic, guys. Very different stories from each year. I absolutely love that. So now it's time to play 6 Degrees of Kevin Prince Boateng. But before we do that, I want to go back to last week's show where we were trying to link Claudio Caniggia and Malcolm Christie, and we failed miserably. But we've had some correspondence, haven't we, Ed?
Yeah, so our first item of correspondence was from Ardsley Celtic FC on Twitter. I really hope that is, the common Twitter of the entire team, and they've come up with this together. It's quite a long one, so stick with me, but I think it checks out. So we start with Claudio Caniggia, and he played with Torre Andre Flo at Rangers. Torre Andre Flo played with Roberto Di Matteo at Chelsea. Di Matteo, of course, played with Aaron Winter at Lazio. Winter played with Andy van der Meijden at Ajax. Van der Meijden played with Kevin Kilban at Everton. Kevin Kilban played with Julio Arca at Sunderland. And, of course, Julio Arca played with Malcolm Christie at Middlesbrough. Now, that to me is a 7-link connection, which I know we say 6 degrees of Kevin Prince Boateng, but surely we must give extra points for some really excellent names.
And we've moved from Scotland to England to Italy to Holland and to Middlesbrough, which I don't really count as part of England anyway. So that in itself is worth extra points. I think that is an absolute sterling effort. And it looks like it does check out. But we have a winner. We have had someone who's got in touch and done it even better than that. Neil, can you go through that for us?
I can in a moment, but I've actually had in the last hour another bit of correspondence.
Oh, hot off the press.
Very Jim White.
Yeah. Anthony Mulaney's been in touch. So Claudio Caniggia played at Dundee with Lee Wilkie, former Scotland international.
Wow.
Lee Wilkie also played at Dundee with Fabrizio Ravanelli during his ill-fated 1 month spell there.
Hipster name.
The White Feather himself played at Derby with Chris Riggott. Riggott played at Borough with Christie, which I've looked into, and that checks out.
So that's even less than what Arsenal Celtic did. So is that 4 or 5?
That's 4 steps.
4 steps. So that's brilliant. So did we get better than that, Neil?
We did indeed, from our friend Damien Coleman, who got in touch on email to mention that very simply, Claudio Caniggia played with Mikel Arteta at Rangers as a youth when he was on loan there, I think from Barcelona. Arteta played at Everton with Yakubu. Yakubu played at Borough with Christie.
Wow, what an effort! That's phenomenal. We really struggled out, but to do that in 3 moves,
he only got that because he's an Everton fan.
It's irrelevant who he supports. He still got it though.
Yeah, it's points. Yeah, points.
Yeah, absolutely points. So before we move on to this week's game, for anyone who hasn't grasped how we do this, this is based on the theory of 6 degrees of separation, where anyone could be linked to anyone else in the world through just 6 people. But we are doing it with footballers and the players they played with and the clubs they played in. Remember the rules. We try not to use internationals and we try not to jump within the same club. So, Ed, can you name the first player for this week, please?
So I toyed with the idea of a Sampdoria player, but I don't think I could come up with anybody that's more of a little dangling bit of bait for the rest of the boys to try and work with than a player we've just mentioned in What If Yugoslavia Had Never Broken Up, and it's Alan Boksic.
Alan Boksic is very Middlesbrough at the moment. James, to you, can you name who we need to link Alan Boksic to?
Oh, we need to link him to one of Canada's finest exports. We need to link him to Thomas Radzinski.
Wow, that's a player I've not thought of for a while. Thomas Radzinski. Right then, gents.
Lads, I think we can do it quite quick.
Go on, Jim.
I've not checked.
Is it Gaza?
No. I think now you would have had Boskic would have played with Mark Schwarzer at Middlesbrough.
Yep.
And I think Mark Schwarzer might have played at Fulham with Radzinski.
Ooh.
That sounds good. Who's on?
Right. Okay. So Mark Schwarzer was definitely at Borough between 01 and 02.
And when was Radzinski at Fulham? And when was Schwarzer at Fulham?
Schwarzer was at Fulham 2008 to 2013.
Oh, that sounds late.
Does, doesn't it?
Yeah, James, I don't think you've got it, pal.
No.
You nearly again, don't you? And you fail.
He gets excited, doesn't he?
He does.
I need to have a word with my good friend Peggy.
Was Yakubu at Borough at the same time as Schwarzer? If it is, we use it pretty much the same as last week, which could work.
Malcolm Christie was, of course.
Of course, Malcolm Christie was.
I think we've got a link between Middlesbrough and Fulham again.
I'll go on.
I think we can do Mark Schwarzer played with Frank Quadru, ex-Recent Club Lens player, and Quadru would have played with Thomas Radzinski at Fulham.
That sounds good.
From 2006 to 2007.
That sounds like we've got a winner there. Ed just checking.
Got Kudra. And I do have Radzinski. So that's a match, 2006 to 2017. And in fact, we could have done it through Mark Crossley as well. Mark Crossley was in the Borough side.
Oh, wow.
Big Norm.
At the same time as Alan Boksic. And of course, he was at Fulham by the time that Radzinski was as well. So there is cross-pollination between those two second-rate sides.
So where are we going from Radzinski to Neil?
Well, I wrote 2 down, and because I didn't, I'll not go with my first option because that would send us back towards Borough.
Obviously.
That was Phil Stamp.
You're always going on about Phil Stamp.
I know, I can't help.
You're never going to meet him.
You're never going to meet him.
One day. Instead, I'll go for Taribo West.
Oh, brilliantly hipster.
Well, look, we have to be looking at the Derby angle here, haven't we? So, from Radzinski, there must be... Yeah, from
Derby.
It's doable because you need to go through Malcolm Bloody Christie again. You can almost go back to Boksic to Christie and then go that way.
We should call this 6 Degrees of Malcolm Christie.
From now on, that is what it will be called.
Oh dear! Right, so Thomas Radzinski played at
Everton with Arteta.
Everton.
There we go.
Who played with Kubu? Who played with Malcolm Christie? Who played?
Surely we can do it in a less circuitous route.
We'd hope so. James is on it.
I'm trying to think. No, Montella. He didn't play for Inter Milan, did he?
Oh, wow. We're going across to Italy and then back again.
No, he played for Roma, Samp, Genoa, as you've
You know, well, how about Materazzi? Was he there at the same time as West at Milan? Because he was at Everton as well, wasn't he?
97 to 99, so it's a very good possibility, to be honest.
Because if that works out, then...
That gets rid of Everton.
Then we get back into the the Arteta circle again, and we're on for a winner.
So Materazzi was at Everton 98-99 season.
And did Materazzi play with West at Milan? At Inter?
Did he play with West? He must have done. He must have done. When was West at Inter? 97-99, did you say?
97-99 was Taribo West.
No, it's not working then, is it? Because Materazzi was still he were at Everton then, 98-99, and he went to Inter afterwards.
Maybe the replacement for West. I think I might have it. I think Taribo West will have played with Roque Jr. at Milan in 2000 to 2001.
Yeah, I'm thinking Roque Jr. is a Milan player rather than Inter player, but yeah, I'm forgetting Taribo West went to Milan.
He only did 4 appearances, but they'll have been there at the same time. I will double check this, but Roque Jr. played at Leeds with Nigel Martin, who will have played at Everton with Thomas Radzinski. Okay, I've got it then. No, we've got it right. Roque Jr. was at Milan in 2000 to 2001 alongside Taribo West, and Nigel Martin was with Roque Jr. at Leeds and was at Everton with Thomas Radzinski. I think we've got it by George.
That
was his trousers.
Can I throw one in there that might be too hipster for words?
Go for it.
So, Taribo West, on his loan spell at Derby, shared a locker room with Con Blatsis, the Australian international, who was at Sheffield Wednesday alongside Mark Pembridge, who played alongside Nicholas Alexanderson. That's a defender, midfielder, and forward, left, right, and centre. Nicholas Alexanderson, who played alongside Thomas Radzinski at Everton.
And that works better because I've just realised Nigel Martin didn't play with Roque Jr. He'd left the season before. So I think that's the winner. I think that's the winner right there.
Yeah, I think Radzinski and Mark Pembridge were both at Fulham at the same time as well.
I think they probably were. And also, probably at, I think Alexanderson and Pembridge were probably at Wednesday at the same time as well. So we can finesse that, but we know that we have got a beautiful four-way that, we can kick somebody out of, and we have got a result.
And I will say to you listening at home, if you can do it quicker, as you did last week, please get in touch with us at Hipster Football Pod on Instagram and Twitter, or email us hipsterfootipod@gmail.com. Now, before we finish the show, I'm sure you guys are gagging to hear who my choice of goalkeeper will be for the Hipster 11. You don't see. Oh no, we have got some nods to the head.
Yes.
So I've thought about this as we've been doing the rest of the show. I was hoping someone was going to say him all along. It's got to be Rodrigo Ceni. He is number one. It's nice to have a goalkeeper that can take set pieces as well. He's a good shot stopper, and I don't have to worry about who's going to take our set pieces. So that is our goalkeeper for the Hipster 11. Next week we will move on to right backs.
Ooh.
Exactly.
So 100% Gary Neville, I assume?
Yeah, no, not at all. Please, no. Although I found him strangely likeable recently, which really disturbs me.
The question is, how many times is Nicholas Alexanderson going to come up? Because, like Ed alluded to earlier, he can play anywhere.
Well, we'll see as we build this 11, James. We will see. So thank you for listening, guys. Remember to like and subscribe, and please do give us a rating on iTunes if you're listening on Apple. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HipsterFootyPod. Have we got any other business, Ed?
No, nothing from me whatsoever, other than it's 30 years this week since Italia 90 started, probably the most defining tournament in any of our lifetimes. It certainly was a tournament that changed my perception of football from something to be endured to something to be loved and treasured. And there's so much content out there, whether it's podcasts, whether it's videos, whether it's just tweets, with loads and loads of memorabilia and memories of that time. So if you're into hipster football, then this is the perfect time to jump in and start swimming deeply. I know that FIFA are playing most of the group stage matches in full on a daily basis. And I am just getting it directly injected into my veins. So enjoy it all. And if you want to have a chat about anything to do with 90s football, then I am at Sausage Arms on Twitter.
Thank you, Ed. Any other business, James?
No other business from me, but I would just like to say thank you to you guys for allowing us to be part of this conversation in regards to Sampdoria. I know how much it means to all three of you, and I've had, to be part of this conversation. I've been absolutely delighted. What a club, and what a bunch of people to have that conversation with.
And we wouldn't have it any other way, James. And any other business, Neil?
Only to say, literally within the last 2 minutes, we've had another tweet from Ardsley Celtic FC, who's putting another suggestion forward. Sadly, it isn't a winning suggestion, but I'll read it out anyway, since it's literally live. Caniggia played at Rangers with Torre Andre Flo, played at Chelsea with Di Matteo, played with Lazio with Aaron Vinter, played with Ajax Andy van der Meijden, played with Kevin Kilban at Everton, who played with George Boateng at Hull, who played with Christie at Borough. So it's another route, another circuitous route from Ardsley Celtic FC.
Thank you. 95% the same. He's literally just at the last minute has gone, I'm off to Hull. Yeah.
I like the fact that his first tweet was about 2 days ago, I think, and he's not stopped thinking about it since.
This is the kind of stuff we love. This is brilliant.
Ardsley Celtic, if you're listening, let it go, mate. Let it go.
But at the same time, you are our hero. It's amazing.
Absolutely. Yeah. And there'll be plenty more for you to follow up on.
Super. Well, thank you for listening, everyone. We'll see you next week. Arrivederci.